Hello, beloveds, and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened Podcast, a space where you come here to thrive in your career, a space where we're adopting soft strength. And today we're speaking about something so critical. But before we get into it, I'm your host, Luyanda Khumbuza, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here once again. So, today we're speaking to our girlies and guys in fast-paced environments. And I think it was very important that in the beginning of this season, we are kind of very clear about the critical discussions when we think soft strength, we think power, we think leadership, and what better way to tie it all together with wellness, right? So we're looking at mental health in fast-performing environments. But let's be honest. Behind all those tight deadlines, the KPI, as well as the promotion, sometimes sits someone very depressed, silent, overwhelmed, and of course, a bit of burnout, which is what we've already spoken about. And yet the pressure still remains. But today's conversation actually is quite necessary and not just timely. Which brings me to my guest today, right? We've been having quite a conversation offline, and I didn't promise her that I've put together something very nice and sweet to introduce her. And I think I'm such a fan of her work. We've gotten the pleasure to meet even before this conversation. And Mbali Mzinyane is a dynamic professional with extensive experience when it comes to navigating corporate leadership, wellness advocacy, and mentorship, right? She's someone that truly understands what it takes to excel when it comes to these high-stake environments. And I think which is why we thought she would be the perfect person to come help us with this discussion while still championing mental health and emotional resilience. Because I think one of the key things that we like, having and speaking about in this platform is that how do we sort of bounce back from situations that sort of challenge us, right? She's not only committed to her own growth, but passionate about creating psychological safe environments for other people too. Mbali, welcome to the Enlightened Podcast, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an important conversation we're having, and I really love the title and the theme of soft strength.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm resting in that soft strength. But I am looking forward to just really talking about something so pivotal, something so important, especially within the context of corporate environments and with us having to put wellness at the center of everything we do. So I am doing well. I am keeping well. And I'm hoping that this conversation can also contribute to other people's wellness.
I love that. I think the beauty about conversations, and somebody that has conversations, got your own podcast. I love how, as the world of work changes, certain things that were priorities then are now taking a seat back, and things that we didn't pay attention to then, such as wellness, are now coming into the spotlight, and we're having conversations about it. But before we get into our discussion as prepared here, why wellness? I think we said we have to start it there. Everyone has a personal story when it comes to being an advocate for mental health and so forth, and taking care of yourself, especially if you're working in high-paced, fast-paced, or even high-pressure environments. 100%. So let's start from there.
Yes. So, I mean, my story starts before the podcast, right? So I was a corporate professional. I have almost a decade of work experience working in different types of workplaces, and what I would actually consider as high performance or high pressure type of environments. And even in the kinds of roles that I've been, having previously been in sales and then later moved to marketing, those are environments that are actually quite demanding. So I had to go through quite a few challenges within the workplace. One was unfortunate because it was a workplace bullying situation that made me really try to orientate myself when it comes to how do I handle a situation like this, and also how do I have the tools and the skills to navigate that. So that's one. Then the second part was me having to personally have gone through a burnout, right? And having to try to recover from that burnout, which has been quite a long process. I mean, I was even making a joke at some point last year that it feels like I'm still recovering from a burnout that happened, And once you go through situations that really challenge you like that mentally, emotionally, and even physically, because they obviously will always manifest physically, it does compel you to stop and rethink how you approach work. And so that led to the birth of Wellness in the Workplace. And I think what a pivotal incident or event like the pandemic actually did for someone like me was allow me to stop and reassess how I want to move and reposition myself going forward. So part of that was then prioritizing wellness. And what I realized was that there aren't a lot of conversations around what wellness is, what it means, and how it can actually show up in the workplace. How do we integrate that into our day-to-day work lives and not resound it or resolve it to being a thing that you only do once a week, a weekend thing, Exactly. So that's how wellness got born. Or got prioritized in my life, and wellness in the workplace then was birthed from that. So that's the platform that I run. It started off as a podcast, but it's now expanded to be, a service offering where I give wellness advisory, wellness talks. I do one-on-one coaching, whether it's career related or wellness related. But that's the work that I do now, and it's the work that I'm really, really, inspired by, and I feel like there's still so much to do in this space.
Mbali, why is this necessary? Why is, mental health and wellness necessary in the workplace specifically?
So what you need to consider with individuals who come into the workplace is that they are holistic individuals, right? You don't come as just Luyanda, the professional. It's Luyanda, the individual. And when you consider the holistic nature of an individual, you consider their mental well-being, their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, their spiritual well-being, as well as their financial well-being, right? So those are the key tenets and key components of wellness. And when it comes to mental health specifically, mental health is actually at the baseline of it all. There is nothing that can disable you more as an individual than your mental well-being not being at a standard that is functional for you. So once you are debilitated mentally, it is very difficult for you to show up emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, and even socially. So it is the foundation for wellness, and it is the foundation for good practice as an individual. So that's why it's important just as an individual. Now bring that into the workplace. It is, we know that the workplace is about, performance. We know that the workplace is about productivity. It's about profitability. And in order for you to be a performer and to be productive and to contribute to a company's bottom line, you have to be well. And we come back again to all those different tenets and components of wellness. And at the baseline of it, the thing that is the foundation and that's solid to wellness is your mental well-being. So that's why it's important.
You've shared with us that you have encountered burnout and sort of, mental strain in your career. And, a lot of people sometimes miss the signs when it comes to that, when your body communicates with you before you even get to that stage of burnout, the little pockets that you experience as a result or as you begin to deteriorate mentally. What are some of those signs that, high performers or people that are operating in high performance and high stake environments can sort of look out for, that are just signs to say, warning, if you don't pause or stop and take care of yourself at this moment, you are headed in the wrong direction?
So, the one thing that I like about what you said is that, it's signs along the way before you reach your burnout state. And that's literally what burnout is, right? It is unmanaged chronic stress, and it comes in different stages. I won't go through those stages in detail, but it is something that is a build up. It's not something that is a once-off event where it found you today and it knocks you off today. It's over a long period of time, and it is because individuals are not aware of, the signs of burnout, and they're not aware of the tools to help prevent burnout, and they're also not aware of what it means to be burnt out, right? So you would find that the time that, a professional decides to say, okay, I need to stop, is usually when their body tells them to stop. It's not because it was a proactive thing. So some of the signs then that, individuals typically overlook, things like chronic fatigue. So that's a very common one. So whether you're sleeping for long hours and you're getting your rest on your weekends, you're not resting. You're just not feeling well rested. Things like even your body showing you through your skin breaking out, for example. You not being able to gain weight, or you putting on weight, for example, over a short period of time. And that's related to your cortisol levels, which is a stress-related hormone that it goes up and down. And because your body is not regulated, it then affects the chemical balance in your body, which then results into you gaining weight, for example, or losing weight rapidly, or having your reduced appetite or increased appetite, whatever the case is. Things like depression, it's okay to have a sad day, but then if it becomes a sad week, a sad month, a sad quarter, a sad half year, a sad year, then that's a problem, And usually, people don't speak up about those things because they're afraid of the stigma. They're afraid of being stigmatized or of being perceived as being vulnerable or weak within a corporate setting. And so they just charge on. They just put that on their back and they say, you know what, I need to park this to the side. I need to put my feelings to the side, overlook what my body is telling me, and just keep pushing, which is a disaster and a recipe for burnout. And once burnout hits, one of the telling signs is when you become very cynical and very apathetic when it comes to your work. So you no longer care. There's like emotional and mental exhaustion coupled with your chronic fatigue or the physical exhaustion. And it's just the cycle of like a very lethargic approach to work and doing life. And you're just heavy all around, but also that I don't care or lack of concern about, your work and how you're seen and how you're perceived ultimately.
So that motivation and that passion, that spark no longer exists.
No longer there. You're out of the honeymoon phase of the burnout stage. You're already there in that chronic burnout stage.
Sure.
And so you are basically depleted, emotionally, mentally, physically, and you need time to recoup and rest.
I want to speak about the silent costs of, that people sort of undergo when it comes to this state of perfectionism that we need to sort of attain in the workplace, right? Constantly always on, hustle, first in, last out approach, right? What is the cost of pushing so hard and ignoring the very signs that you've just spoken to us about?
So I think one thing we need to demystify about perfectionism is that it actually doesn't exist. When we speak about perfectionism, we're actually talking about having unrealistic standards.
Sure.
So it's one thing to have high standards and high quality of work, but it's another to have an unrealistic attainment of those standards and quality of work. And I think that's where that, misconception and misalignment tends to be. And so when we think about, the costs that come with trying to live up to this constantly high-paced, high pressure environment, and also this high standard of delivery, you are thinking about somebody who is going to deplete themselves emotionally, physically, mentally, sometimes even spiritually, because you're so tired that you can't even, invest back into the things that pour into yourself. You're looking at somebody who might have an imbalance when it comes to their work and life, right? Because if you're talking about high standards and high stakes and you want to deliver all the time, that means you have to dedicate time and effort. And what does that mean? It takes away time for other things. So you might not even have a social life. You might not even have an active life. That then can affect you physically, because you're not making time for gym, probably. You're not eating well because you don't have the time to prepare healthy meals for yourself, or you don't have the time to go to the gym. It compromises so many things in your life and other elements. And again, coming back to the different tenets of wellness being emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial, your center is going to be very skewed because you're not pouring into all those things. In order for you to be able to be a well-balanced and well-integrated individual, you have to pour into all of those things. And the cost of always being on, performing at a high pace, high standard all the time, comes with you having to compromise pouring into those different aspects of yourself. So it is a very dangerous place to be, because I don't think one individual or any individual can always be operating at that level without the right amount of rest and recovery, and without the amount of balance across the different elements of wellness.
It's getting serious. And that's why I'm sighing, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, the cost is you.
The cost is you.
Basically.
That's exactly it. The cost is you.
Sure.
And if we were to take that and put it in the context of the company, the cost is the company's bottom line. So it matters for the company to also care about their wellness and the wellness of the people, right?
Sure.
Because if the people are not well, it means they're not performing. If they're not performing, they're not being productive. And if they're not being productive, they are not being profitable. So
I think let's stay there for a bit when it comes to the companies.
Mm-hmm.
What role do companies have? And I can guess also say organizational culture, because now culture is such a big word, right? We go into these organizations and they say, walk the talk now, and do you do as others are doing. We're following in the culture. And if it's that culture of, perfectionism, that culture of unrealistic expectations, that culture of, leading to things that lead up to burnout, how can employees start safeguarding their well-being, and what role does organizations now play when it comes to such critical discussions?
Sure. So I always talk about a shared responsibility when it comes to wellness, right? So when we talk about a shared responsibility, it means that the employee as well as the organization are both responsible in creating wellness. It's no use that the individual is investing in their well-being so much, and when they come into the environment is not conducive, right? Nor is it conducive if the organization is investing in the wellness of the environment, but the individual is not taking care of themselves. So that equation must always be balanced from both sides, right? So there's a role for the individual to play to ensure that from an individual standpoint, how am I? What does wellness mean to me? How can I support myself as best as possible so that I am well to show up in, the different ways and the different roles that I'm in, whether it's in the workplace or outside. And then for the organization, it is how do we preserve the well-being of our people, and what does well-being look like in this workplace? People usually think that wellness and profitability are mutually exclusive. That is not the case. Wellness equals to profitability, right? And that's an equation that I think a lot of leaders need to start thinking about or repositioning in their minds, to say that if our people are not well, we are not going to be profitable. Because what does that mean if our people are not well? It means that there's high absenteeism rates. It means that there's high rates of presenteeism, meaning that people are at the office but they're not engaged. It means that there's a high turnover rate, meaning that people are leaving the organization very quickly. So they come in, they don't stay because this is such a high pressure or even toxic environment that they can't handle it, and so they leave very prematurely, and that is a cost to the company, and so the importance then of prioritizing wellness for the organization becomes very important, or it becomes very high up on the list rather. And that means that for them, it's about how do we create a wellness strategy that goes beyond a wellness day, that goes beyond a mental health day. It's now starting to talk about how do we integrate wellness in our culture. And I don't know if, we're going to chat a bit more about the integration of wellness in the culture.
We definitely will. There's this, I don't know whether, I don't want to call it what do you call it? It's not a myth, but people often roll their eyes when we speak about wellness in the workplace, because they just like, oh, Lama t-shirts, the lanyards.
Yes, these wellness days.
These wellness days. Yeah. You have to participate.
Yes, yes.
Have you seen any sort of progressive approaches that companies and leaders can actually sort of start prioritizing when it comes to, wellness, and not the cliche that, now employees sort of kind of think that, it's just that day off where we get to walk and talk, place and stuff like that. But it goes far beyond that, because I also think that they also, as an organization, will set the tone of how serious wellness actually is by the things and the budgets that get allocated to things like that.
So, I mean, I have not seen it as a full end-to-end comprehensive wellness strategy for myself. And in my experience, it's always been like in pockets, whether it's through a workshop or it's through a wellness day or wellness talk. But I think there is that opportunity for organizations to now think about a wellness strategy as an end-to-end thing, right? So it starts from having, a clearly defined strategy around what does wellness look like in this organization. Then it's about what are the tools and the resources that we have within the organization that can then add to this strategy. And what do we need to then get, from externally, whether it's an employee assistant program, whether it's having a wellness specialist or wellness officer. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing a chief well-being officer, which I have never come across before. And I think for me, it's indicative of how much wellness is becoming prioritized, that we're now having individuals and roles at a C-suite level, right, dedicated to understanding what well-being is like within an organization. And then it's also then normalizing conversations around wellness. It's normalizing conversations around mental health, where it is not only something that is spoken about around Mental Health Awareness Month, but it's something that is spoken about on the day-to-day basis. And then part of that normalization means that you have leaders who are champions of wellness within the organization, because what we've noticed is that leaders are typically the culture setters. They set the culture, they set the pace for the organization. So if they're the ones that are embodying wellness and they're the ones that, are speaking openly about their mental health challenges, or are speaking openly about, issues around wellness, then it creates that space where employees can then feel like, oh, I can talk about this actually. I can open up about this as well, and I will be seen and I will be heard, and something can be done about it. And once that space is then created, then it's about questioning what interventions do we then have, in our organization. Because now if we have somebody who is, let's say, mentally distressed, or somebody who's in the verge of doing something unfortunate to themselves because of how stressed and overwhelmed they are, whether it's through substance abuse or potential suicide ideations, which are real challenges and issues that we hear about in the workplace, and all work-related or have work-related stresses that are attached to them. Then it's about, we need to have the interventions then to ensure that once we create the space and somebody comes and says, I have this problem, we know where to point them. We know what to do. Whether that's then through an EAP service, whether that's through having an on-site counselor or a therapist or an industrial psychologist who can then come and contribute then to the conversations and to building an architecture around this wellness strategy, then, those are the interventions and the ways that, organizations can then prioritize. But like I said, I've seen it in pockets. I have not seen anything that has happened, full on end to end. Whether it is through my workplace experiences as a professional, or it's through the consultation that I've been doing via Wellness in the Workplace.
I always say that, guys, it's been hard being a leader. There's so much responsibility that rests on your shoulders, right? And I think I saw this video this morning. Mel Robbins, she's also a podcast.
Yes,
I love her. She was speaking about how leaders are sort of seen as the weather. You become the weather.
100%.
Basically, when you walk into the organization, you've got the ability to set the tone, the feel, the atmosphere, the vibe, which I think you spoke so beautifully about, to say that whatever it is that is lacking in the organization, apart from having the policies sitting in the cupboards and the systems being in place, somebody has to sort of model it. And it rests on the leaders 100%. To then model this for the employees. What tools and practices have worked for you when it comes to maintaining and taking care of your mental wellness?
Sorry, before answering that, I think you highlighted such an important point around the policy. So that's where your HR expertise comes into play, right? And that's also another thing that needs to be considered. considered once you're thinking about this wellness strategy. It's a very important one because once it's in the policy, right, it means that it is something that, your employees and your leaders can then be held account to, right? If it's in the policy, it means that it's something that somebody has to live up to.
Sure.
And if it's not there, then it's very difficult for you to manage what that strategy is going to play out like and how it's going to be measured or even implemented. So yeah, I think that's a very important point that you highlighted around the policies. But coming back to some of the tools that I've used, I actually am a big fan of therapy. So
a therapized black girl.
A therapized black girl, 100%. So during my, workplace bullying situation some years ago, I can't believe it's been close to, actually, let me not give a time because it might indicate which organization I was working for at the time. So I'll keep quiet. But during that situation, one of my ways to really process what was happening and to give context to my experiences was a therapist. I relied heavily on that, and that was very useful for me in just grounding me and also just allowing me to process some of the emotions that then came up, right? I do believe in having that outlet, whether it's through a coach, a therapist, a mentor, but having that space to be able to process the things that you are going through, right? Because you need to name some of these experiences. And when you don't have the name, then it makes you feel very lost in terms of what's actually happening. It can cause a lot of anxiety. It can cause a lot of overwhelm because once you name something, then you can strategize around how am I going to deal with it. Now that I know that what it is, then it means that I can have the tools to actually effectively deal with it. So when you're in a state of ambiguity, it causes a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, and that can be very disorienting as an individual. So therapy is one of the things that I strongly believe in. One of the things that I'm actively doing right now is coaching, not only as a coach, but having a coach myself. Well, right? Because I think that, when you do experience a lot of these challenges in the workplace, or sometimes even outside of the workplace, but it affects your performance at work, what a coach then does is that they give you perspective and they remind you of some of the goals that you have set for yourself. So if you have a coach that you have developed a personal development plan with, for example, that coach will hold you accountable to that, to say, hey, didn't you say that, you want to actually be a marketing manager or a marketing director? So what does it mean for you when you say you want to leave this organization because you're feeling this way? Does it mean that you're going to move to a role that is going to be at the same level as you right now in a different company? Is it possible for you to move to a different department, for example? Maybe you could work in sales because some of those sales experiences can add to your marketing repertoire or expertise. And what does that mean for you? So a coach can really hold you to account in terms of how do you navigate these different parts of your life that are shifting in line with your goals, but also considering the context of where you are. If the environment is unhealthy for you, then the coach, will be somebody to help you strategize around how do we move out of it or how do we manage it. And so that's something that I strongly believe in. And then lastly, from a day-to-day basis, we were talking about it briefly around journaling. I do journal and I do believe in it so much. It allows you to process your emotions again. And with journaling, a key thing that it also does for you is to pick up patterns, right? So if you find that you've been journaling about the same thing over and over again, and you having the same kind of emotions and, the same kind of conclusion around that situation, then it allows you to get to a point to say, okay, I see what is happening here. Then it means that this is either a problem or maybe it's something that I need to address or it's something that's really working. So that pattern recognition that comes from journaling, it really empowers you and helps you just center yourself. Also helps you again to process what's happening around you so that it anchors you towards something that can help you resolve what you're going through.
Sure.
So yeah.
And then obviously resonate with that. I'm sorry to cut you.
No.
When you mentioned that, being able to recognize these patterns, because I almost think as well, when you undergo something of this nature, because I take it very seriously, I think you almost you are so removed, like mentally and emotionally, that some of the things that you don't see them for what they truly are or the depth, right? So sometimes you can dismiss something and be like, oh no, it wasn't bullying. Maybe I'm just feeling a bit emotional today.
Yes.
And you'll stop making excuses instead of addressing the problem. So I think having that person that you can always bounce back to and relay a situation openly and honestly so that they can give you the right feedback is quite important.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, you do that obviously with somebody because the different perspective will help to contextualize things for you. But it's also having to do that yourself, right? Because it's one thing to talk about things, it's another to actually apply it. And that's, I guess, the beauty around, the journaling that we were talking about is that it gets you to start saying things in your own words and for you to say, actually, this is what is happening. And this is my experience and interpretation of it. So it gives you that voice, and it is empowering because once you have that voice and once you have clarity of what is happening, the confusion goes away, and what is left is just a sense of empowerment and knowing how to approach situations in a better and more sustainable way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I don't like about this. Every time when it gets so good, time's up. But before we draw to a close and before I let you go, and I think we'll have to continue the conversation. This is one of the things that I don't think we should visit only on the specific months, but it's conversations that we should always keep having as we're building and navigating our careers. What are some of the myths about mental health in professional settings that you wish that people would sort of challenge more, or maybe ones that you wish you had challenged?
Yeah. So, I mean, the more that I talk to people who are in mental health advocacy, whether as professionals or people living with mental illnesses, one of the things that comes up, which is a big misconception, is that people who have mental health challenges are incompetent. They can't, or weak, or they can't do their jobs. And I think that is such a fallacy because for somebody who, for example, might have a physical illness, we don't say that about them. We recognize that, oh no, so-and-so has, maybe I don't even want to equate it to a disability, but, it's something that people are more understanding and empathetic to when it is a physical and a visible impediment versus when it is mental.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that speaks to a lack of understanding of mental illness. It's a lack of education around mental illness. And also it speaks to the stigma that still lives around mental illness. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done around education of mental health and mental health awareness, as well as just demystifying and destigmatizing those issues within the workplace.
This is exactly why I say today's conversation is a necessity. We have to keep having them so that we can break such stigmas. And if you could leave one of our audience members with just one piece of advice when it comes to, or even a reminder when it comes to choosing wellness in the face of being in these high pressure, spaces, what would that be?
Choose yourself first.
Sure.
Choose yourself first. One of the things that I didn't mention earlier, but very relevant to this answer, is around just that boundary setting, right? And it comes from defining what wellness is for you. And once you understand what wellness is for you, understand then how do you integrate that into your life? How do you integrate that into your work? And what parameters and boundaries do you need to set around that so that you don't overextend yourself, you don't overwork yourself, and you don't overstay where you are not needed. Welcome, exactly. And a lot of that has to do with the boundary setting and the self-awareness around what does wellness mean for me, because it is an individual and personalized experience.
Sure. For anyone who wants to get in touch with you and get in touch with wellness in the workplace, where can they find you?
Yes. So you can find me on social media. So Instagram, it's at wellness in the workplace _ on LinkedIn, wellness in the workplace. That's the company page. But you can also find my personal page, which is Mbali Mzinyane on LinkedIn. If you do want to shoot us an email because you want to inquire about something, it's Mbali at wellnessintheworkplace.co.za. We also have a website. So yeah.
Check out all the information there. There you have it. Thank you so much for your time. And I think the most incredible thing that I'm happy that you left us with is that you've really shown us that, you know, our softness is our superpower, and taking care of ourselves is still seen as leadership and strength and not necessarily a weakness. This has been an amazing conversation, and I promise to bring her back. And thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, I am your host, Luyanda Khumbuza. Bye.